Welcome to Tapped In. My name is Figueroa-Martinez of DFM Coaching, and we're going to be reviewing the UFC jumping into Jiu-Jitsu. I have a blog that's going to be posted soon, and I decided that I wanted to cover the topic as an audio companion. I'm going to cover this in two stages. I think that if I can turn my brain off and I can go back to when I was a white/early blue belt, and I was paying for all the IBJJF Worlds, Masters Worlds, and all their events so I can watch who would win and who would be in the finals, and I would spend all day watching. If I could take myself back to that, I'm kind of excited for what's going to go on. I'm excited for what could be in a couple of different areas, one of which being just visibility alone, having the UFC step in and assist and put this on a bigger stage. Part of me is super excited. I have wanted to watch Jiu-Jitsu on a higher platform for a long time, and I never really knew whether it was going to get there or not. I remember being newer to the sport and really wanting it to be something that would be in the Olympics. But as I got older, certain things changed. My view changed on a couple of things, which we'll get into later. But I think having this on a big stage like Fight Pass is going to be huge. It's going to be a big benefit in that sense. More people are going to watch. It might create more buzz when it comes to students coming into the mat or into academy and wanting to pursue jiu-jitsu. It may kind of become something like wrestling in high school, or it may rival some of the other smaller sports that we were continually kind of butting up against. I think the other thing that's going to really help is the financial potential. I think that having more eyeballs could potentially help athletes and gyms grow. We could potentially have more people signing up, like I mentioned before, and creating more buzz and more opportunities for us to do things. There may be more opportunities in the sense of sponsorship deals because more brands might step in, especially when you have, the UFC is highlighting this. So I'm excited for these things. The mainstream legitimacy pushing this. We're a very fringe sport, and it's hard to get eyeballs and get certain sponsorships deals outside of like the mom and pop jiu-jitsu spots. And who knows if we're going to have a Nike or a Reebok or whoever stepping in and kind of showcasing more athletes and maybe driving this to a specific position that we could have only dreamed of. There are a lot of pluses to this if I could turn my brain off. I'm excited. I'm excited for the idea that they're going to do a Fight House tough type of show for this. There's a lot of names on this list that they pulled that I don't know, so I would love to get to know them more and have more eyeballs again on the sport. But some concerns that I have are relegated around culture, contracts, who's controlling the sport, and what this all might look like in a couple of years, a decade, or 2 decades. I don't know. I think that MMA culture is very different than that of jiu-jitsu culture. And the more Dana White kind of pushes MMA culture, it gets pushed further and further along certain lines that may not be beneficial for all of us. And I don't even mean politically. We're already seeing a lot of athletes talking trash, get into fights, hyping things up so they can get their name out there, which I don't think is beneficial to us as jiu-jitsu athletes because we're supposed to be martial artists beforehand. And there's supposed to be a certain level of like understanding and control over yourself emotionally and physically. And when we don't have that, are we really a martial art anymore? Are we just a fight brand? Are we MMA? And what are we? So it's going to be interesting to see where the cultures kind of clash, because the UFC is a brand that's about entertainment and engagement. If you're a quiet jiu-jitsu athlete who maybe does really good on the mats, but you're not bringing buzz and hype, do you get promoted? Where does that leave you? Do the people who get promoted, are all of them going to be Conor McGregor style or John Jones style athletes? What does that do to the martial art? I don't know. The other aspect that I'm concerned of is exclusive deals. What's that's going to look like? While the financial aspect is to be told, and it might be beneficial for athletes who who are trying to make a living without having to work a side job or two. And if you're making who knows what, DK a year, 100, anywhere close to that, you don't have to necessarily, depending on where you were living, have to pick up these side jobs, which is going to be huge. It will give athletes more time to train and get better. But what does it do, large picture or down the line, in the sense of, does the UFC allow you to work with ADCCs, IBJJF, Fight to Win? Does it allow its athletes to go participate at ADCCs, which is quote unquote our Olympics, and compete there? Kind of like the NBA allows its athletes to go to the Olympics and compete, even with the concern of injuries, they allow it because it's better for the sport. Does the UFC give a shit? Or do they want to just control it all? And if they want to control it all with exclusive deals, where does that leave something like ADCCs? Specifically, I'm not worried as much about IBJJF. ADCCs, I think, is a different venture that everyone's strived to be in, to be that champion. And I don't know what it's going to look like if there's these exclusive contracts. Does ADCC then start doing exclusive contracts? Do they try to raise the money? Maybe they help that way. I don't know. But it's going to be interesting to see where those things kind of lay out with time. I'm also curious how it's going to affect big and small gyms. I think the small gyms are going to maybe get a boost if this sport starts to grow. But then you're going to come across those an athlete wants to get more recognition, so they want to go to a gym that's bigger, a gym that has more potential for them being noticed, winning. So does that leave the smaller gyms behind? Kind of like when, similar to how everyone's saying that if we let amateur athletes get paid, the bigger gyms or the bigger gyms or universities are going to start pulling all the athletes. They're going to pull and make these big giant teams, which was already happening. But there's a little bit of concern of that. Like, where does that look like if the goal is just to be a professional and the art gets left behind? I don't know. How do things look like when it comes to rule set and development? If the UFC has the control or the leverage to pursue certain rule sets, maybe they're exciting, maybe they're fan friendly. How does that alter the art further than it already has with the competition scene? Do we negate certain fundamentals because a flashy technique garners more eyeballs, which we've already seen in large part? So it's going to be interesting to see how that unfolds. And we're not even stretching into like the propaganda aspect of what the UFC has been doing lately with MMA. It is literally a wing of MAGA. And I know we're not supposed to talk about politics and whatnot, but if the UFC has already pushed out quite a few of the left-leaning fans because they run so right, what does that do for jiu-jitsu, for people who genuinely need that art? And maybe they start saying, well, it's tied into Dana and the UFC, and what kind of gym am I going to go see if I'm looking at UFC Bjj? How does that benefit or hinder the growth of the sport if it's so ground into this segment of the population that not everyone agrees with? That's going to be pretty interesting to watch. I know that I've gotten some interesting concepts as a practitioner from people who are very left-leaning, which I don't always agree with, but I get. And it's hard to be in a sport that is starting to look like already aspects of UFC MMA in America. And it gets really hard when you start seeing the top athletes side and push for certain politics, and here you are just trying to enjoy jiu-jitsu and you don't know exactly how that's going to pan out now that the UFC starts doing what they're doing. It's going to be very interesting. I generally don't know how it's going to pan out. If I put my thinking cap on, I don't think this is a great thing. I think there's going to be short-term benefits. I think that there's going to be benefits for the sport and the athletes who get in a little early. Long-term, it might be more harmful than beneficial, similar to like how people got excited about judo entering the Olympics and it turning out into something that it no longer really resembled when it first got in. A lot of the rule changes, a lot of the dynamics changed. But again, who knows? I'm speculating. I have my own concerns. I have my own excitements. This is just very new to the sport. And I just have concerns based on Dana not being the greatest interpreter or leader of a sport. Does it alter? I know I sort of went over this. Does it alter whether women want to go into the sport or not? Like you have a guy who heralded someone like Conor McGregor who attacked the bus. You have a guy who heralds John Jones who has multiple issues. He himself, Dana, has been on video with issues. I don't think that this is beneficial to the art. It's beneficial to the sport. And even then, it's probably arguably harmful if you really want to think about it long term. I think the art is going to suffer. I think the idea that you're supposed to be humble and you're supposed to control yourself, all those things are going to suffer. The sport will probably get more popular. I don't know. It's going to be very interesting. One thing that I am interested in and I find fascinating is the pit that they created, similar to CGI's approach in karate. It keeps the action in the middle. It adds an interesting dynamic, a little wrinkle. You can't run out of bounds, which has been an issue in some events. So that aspect I'm very interested in. I'm curious how it's going to pan out, how the matches are going to look. It's a very unique aspect or take on what we've been seeing lately. So the younger side of me is excited about what it's going to be. The older side of me, the one that's a little more conscious of what I'm seeing and a little more thoughtful, does have some major concerns. If you have any questions, I would love to know your opinions. Actually, maybe I'm off here, maybe I'm right, maybe I'm on the bullseye. I really don't know, and I would love to hear your thoughts on this. If you want to work with me, hit me up on dfm.2099 on Instagram and Threads. I'm very active on Threads. Ever have any questions, please hit me up. I love answering questions, love helping people out. If you're in San Diego, the last Sunday of the month, I'm doing a Kimura seminar to help a family out whose son is going through open heart surgery, and it's $30 to come in. Please hit up Five Peaks and get your name on the list. And once we reach capacity, they're going to close it down. In the meantime, if you want to help out the family through the GoFundMe, I have that link up. Any questions, just in general, want to work with me, please let me know. Thank you so much.